Good evening. We will call this meeting of October 2nd, 2023 CAP to session. So this meeting of the Community Affairs and Planning Committee is being held in a hybrid format with virtual and in-person participation by members of the public, staff, and council. This meeting is also being live streamed and may be viewed online at ajax.ca/live. A friendly reminder to all participants, please use their microphone at all times for the benefit of those participating in council chambers and joining remotely. To those making submissions as part of a public meeting, please ensure you sign in using the sheet available at the accessible lectern to reserve rights available to you under the Planning Act or other applicable legislation. I will now call this meeting to order. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas. More specifically, the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunstruct Treaty of 1788 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home of the Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action in acknowledging the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. I have here a motion move to adopt the amendments by Mayor Collier, seconded by Councillor Tyler Moore, that the minutes of Community Affairs and Planning Committee on September 5th, 2023 be approved. Are there any questions on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call to vote. And that passes. We'll now move on to the public meeting items. We have item 4.1, PDS 2023-32, the official plan amendment application, OPA 23-A1, zoning bylaw amendment application Z3/22, draft plan of subdivision application S-A-2022-01, Coghlan Homes, west side of Church Street North, north of the Hydro Corridor. I believe we have I'll hand it to Director Romanowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric Simpson's here this evening to provide CAP Committee presentation on the proposed development applications.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, council, staff, members of the public that are joining us tonight. My name is Eric Simpson. I'm the planner responsible for processing the submitted development applications. So my presentation will provide a brief overview of what's been submitted. Please note that this meeting does serve as a statutory public meeting for council to consider these applications. So the subject lands are located on the west side of Church Street North, north of the Hydro Corridor, and are comprised of 3 parcels of land. That includes 1620 Church Street North, the northern parcel, which includes an existing single detached dwelling and accessory building, an unaddressed parcel, which is the middle parcel, which is currently vacant, and 1520 Church Street North, which is the southern parcel and is also vacant. The subject lands are located in the northwest portion of the town's urban area boundary and are surrounded by the following land uses. To the north, along the west side of Church Street North, are rural and environmentally sensitive lands up to Ton Road West. To the east, across Church Street North, are lands subject to a residential development proposal, which are outlined in detail in the following slides. North of such is an existing cemetery, and south of the Hydro Corridor are existing residential developments. Directly south of the subject lands is the Hydro Corridor, which features a trail, and further south are residential lands, the Duffins Village Central Park, and an undeveloped school block. To the west, within the city of Pickering, are environmentally sensitive lands comprised of a valley corridor associated with Irvay Creek. Portions of the subject lands are located within the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority regulated area of the Duffins Creek watershed as it relates to the environmental features associated with the Irvay Creek Valley. This development proposal follows from a Master Environmental Servicing Plan, known as an MESP, that was completed for a larger study area of which the subject lands are located. Coghlan Homes, known as Cougs, initiated the MESP process in 2017, and approval was followed in early 22 by the TRCA and the town. Generally, the purpose of an MESP is to support large-scale development proposals within undeveloped designated greenfield areas. The completed MESP addresses engineering and environmental matters for the subject lands and was comprised of various technical supporting studies and assessments that focused on defining the natural features and functions of the area, establishing the limits of development, addressing the potential impacts of development on such environmental features and functions, and providing servicing concepts for sanitary sewer, water, and stormwater in support of the future development of the lands. The completion of the MESP has enabled Cougs to submit the submitted development applications. In order to provide the future development context of the surrounding area, a breakdown of the surrounding development applications and proposals has been provided on the screen. The lands illustrated in green, and as number 1 on the screen, are municipally known as 1641 Church Street North. The owner of these lands, Lakeview Homes, has submitted zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications to facilitate the development of a residential subdivision consisting of single detached dwellings and street townhouse dwellings. These applications are scheduled to be heard by council in the coming weeks. The lands illustrated in yellow and orange, number 2 on the screen, are municipally known as 1564 Church Street North. The owner of these lands, Daste Investments Limited, has completed an initial pre-consultation process with the town and is in the process of preparing their reports and studies for formal submission. The owner intends to submit development applications to facilitate the development of a residential subdivision consisting of single detached dwellings and a medium density block to include condominium townhouse dwellings. North of the subject lands, illustrated in blue and as number 3 on the screen, is an unaddressed parcel of land. The owner of these lands have also completed an initial pre-con process with the town for the proposed development of a residential subdivision consisting of single detached dwellings and street townhouse dwellings. North of these lands, illustrated in purple and as number 4 on the screen, is another unaddressed parcel of land. This owner as well has completed an initial pre-con process with the town for the development of a residential subdivision. This proposal is still early in the plan formation stage. During the MESP process with Cougs, Lakeview Homes submitted their development applications. Following completion of the MESP process and prior to Cougs' formal submission of their development applications, staff engaged in a pre-consultation process with Daste Investments Limited for their proposal. Through the review of all 3 development proposals, so Cougs, Lakeview Homes, and Daste, conflicts regarding subdivision design and coordination emerged leading to various meetings with staff and the different owners' applicants. In accordance with the road system schedule of the official plan, a future roundabout symbol is identified in the vicinity of the 3 development proposals. In an effort to streamline development coordination, ensure a coordinated road network for the different development proposals, and to satisfy the concerns of the different owners, the town agreed to the removal of the future roundabout symbol, provided an administrative amendment be made to the official plan, and subject to the financial contributions being provided by all of the applicable owners. For the town to secure for a future installation of a signalized intersection within the vicinity of the lands. As a result, Cougs, Lakeview Homes, and Daste Investments Limited submitted official plan amendment application OPA 23A1. The official plan amendment application proposes to remove the future roundabout symbol from Schedule C1 of the official plan as it relates to the future development of a segment of Church Street North, located north of the Hydro Corridor and south of Taunton Road West. As mentioned, this was submitted jointly by Cougs, Lakeview Homes, and Daste. The zoning bylaw amendment proposes to rezone portions of the subject lands to permit the proposed development. This is outlined in more detail in the following slides. The draft plan of subdivision proposes to establish the necessary lots, blocks, and public right-of-ways to facilitate the proposed development. The approval of the draft plan of subdivision application is subject to the applicant satisfying all conditions of draft approval to the satisfaction of the town and all other agencies that have issued conditions, such as the region and the TRCA. The proposed residential subdivision consists of lots for 149 single detached dwellings, blocks for 72 street townhouse dwellings. This consists of traditional townhouses and double front townhouses, park blocks, natural heritage system blocks, a stormwater management pond block, a public lane, public roads, and associated road widening blocks. A total of 221 dwellings are proposed. As per Schedule B of the official plan, a neighborhood park symbol is identified on the subject lands. The proposed draft plan of subdivision includes one park and one parkette block. The proposed park block has an area of 0.24 hectares and is located at the northwest corner of the proposed intersection of Street A and B within the western portion of the subdivision. The intent is to combine the proposed park block with a park block to be included in the Daste Investments development proposal. The park blocks will be combined to provide an approximate 0.5 hectare park. Lot frontages of approximately 9 meters, or 30 feet, and 12 meters, which is 40 feet, are proposed for the single detached dwellings, with the majority of the singles consisting of 9-meter frontages. Two different forms of street townhouse dwellings are proposed. Double front townhouse dwellings that will have frontage on both a public road and a public lane, and traditional townhouse dwellings that will have frontage on public roads. The double front townhouse dwellings are proposed in the southeast portion of the proposed draft plan and will have frontage on the proposed Street E, Laneway D, and Church Street North. The portion of the dwelling that fronts onto the lane will contain a garage and driveway. The style of dwelling does not have a traditional rear yard, hence the name double front. The traditional townhouse dwellings will have typical front and rear yards, while the double front townhouse dwellings will have either terraces or balconies or an internal courtyard as a form of outdoor amenity space. Lot frontages of 6 meters or 20 feet are proposed for both forms of townhouses. The proposed dwellings will be between 2 and 3 stories in height. The elevations included on the screen represent potential designs that the applicant is exploring. However, there will be an architectural control process through the detailed design stage. The proposed dwellings are reflective of existing dwellings located along both sides of Church Street North, south of the Hydro Corridor. As previously mentioned, through coordinated efforts with the applicant and adjacent development proponents, the town agreed to the removal of the roundabout symbol, provided an administrative amendment be made to the official plan, and subject to financial contributions being provided to the town through future development approvals in order for the town to secure for the future installation of a signalized intersection within the vicinity of the lands. Traffic impact studies submitted in support of the development proposal and the Lakeview Homes development proposal conclude that the proposed intersections for both plans do not warrant the installation of a traffic signal at this time and are anticipated to operate efficiently as unsignalized accesses with one-way stop control. Further, the studies indicate that the inclusion of a roundabout would provide negligible traffic improvements. Regardless, in lieu of the proposed removal of the envisioned roundabout, the town intends to collect financial contributions from all owners on a proportionate share basis in preparation of a potential future signalized intersection to facilitate traffic volumes for the full build-out of this area. The subject lands are currently zoned agricultural A zone within the town of Ajax zoning bylaw. In an urban area context within the town, the A zone is reflective of undeveloped lands. The current zoning of the subject lands is not reflective of the overarching official plan designations, that being the low-density residential and environmental protection designations. In order to permit the development proposal, the applicant is requesting that the zoning bylaw be amended as follows. Rezone portions of the subject lands from the A zone to different residential zones with a site-specific exception in order to establish development standards that would implement the proposed development. Rezone portions of the subject lands that are not included within the limits of development from the A zone to the environmental protection zone for long-term protection and preservation purposes, and rezone portions of the subject lands from the A zone to the open space zone for public, parkland, and open space, as well as stormwater management facility purposes. The development limits were determined through a comprehensive review process, which examined a series of environmental and technical studies in consultation with the TRCA. Vegetation protection zones, known as VPZs, from environmental features were applied to determine the development limits. All features and their associated VPZs will be rezoned to the environmental protection zone through the proposed amendment and will be required to be conveyed to public ownership. Through the continued review and approval process of the plan of subdivision application, enhancements and restoration of the environmental protection lands will be required and secured for. The development applications were reviewed against the applicable provincial, regional, and town land use planning policy. The specific policies are outlined in detail in the report. As per the report, the development proposal is consistent with the policies of the PPS and conforms with the policies of the Growth Plan, Regional Official Plan, and Town of Ajax Official Plan. The proposed development supports the narrative of municipal goals and objectives that would contribute to the overall urban structure by contributing to the range and mix of housing types and opportunities within the town, providing compatible development that is sensitive to the existing character of the surrounding area and reflective of the built form and density permissions of the low-density residential designation to help advance the town's growth management targets, and advancing the build-out of the town's remaining designated greenfield area, while also enhancing the connectivity of the town's greenland system by providing new open space and recreational opportunities. Staff have reviewed the submitted development applications and are of the opinion that the proposed development makes efficient use of underutilized land within the town and provides for low-density residential intensification to help contribute towards the town and regional goal of providing a mix of housing types and sizes to serve residents of various household sizes, incomes, and ages. The proposed development will facilitate growth within the designated greenfield area of the town that is consistent with the development character of the surrounding area and that reinforces prevailing development patterns. The proposed development provides for compatible intensification that will enhance the Church Street North streetscape, as well as maintain the streetscape that has been established already through existing and approved developments within the built-out portion further south. Therefore, staff recommend approval of the development applications, subject to the recommendations provided in this report and outlined on the screen. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. We have some questions from council regarding the presentation. We'll start with Regional Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Eric, thank you very much for your report. My question is around the roundabout. I think I heard you say the developers couldn't agree on something and so the roundabout came out? Is that what I mean, the Coles Note version?
Through the chair to Regional Councillor Crawford, there was design coordination issues amongst the three, just trying to implement a roundabout, which is a significant chunk of area within like a small amount of area to work within. So the town agreed that if some form of traffic control, like a signalized intersection, could be secured for it, then we would be open to the removal, and that's what's led us here today.
Because one of the sweet things about this whole development was the roundabout. Because, I mean, sitting on Vision Zero, we know that that's one of the things that we're starting to add more and more into developments because it has a calming effect and continue flow of traffic. So I'm disappointed that that's taken out. But what you're saying is there's not enough traffic for a signalized intersection right now, so there's nothing?
There'd be nothing at this point in time, and even through the full build out of those developments, their studies indicate that a signal isn't warranted, but despite that, the town's still securing for one.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question, and you may not be able to answer this, so I'm fine with that, but do you have any indication of when a school will be built in that area? Has the school board said anything or put any applications in for that?
So this applicant, Coghlan Homes, was the developer just south of
Yeah.
the Hydro Corridor, and there is a vacant school block there. The school board, Durham District School Board, just recently purchased the lands to exercise their option for it. So when that will happen, I don't know, but they do intend to build a public school there.
Well, that's good news
Yeah.
that they've at least they purchased it. So because the problem, as you know, is that as communities are growing, they use other schools to grow,
Yeah.
which causes all kinds of problems with traffic. So do you know, like this group of students, once this is built out, would be going to, well, actually, they might even have the school built by that point. But anyway, okay, that's good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I answered my own question.
Councillor Henry?
Thank you. My question was also about the roundabouts because we're getting a lot of feedback from residents about speeding along that street, particularly as it is further north. So to Regional Councillor Crawford's point, we're taking the roundabouts off. We're not having those at all, and we're not having traffic lights till what time did you say in the near future is this going to happen?
So there's still a roundabout proposed south of the Hydro Corridor that's already been secured for, but it can't be implemented until certain lands get developed. It's just the roundabout that was supposed to be north of the Hydro Corridor that's being proposed to be removed. And the signal wouldn't come in until there's a need proven for it. And that wouldn't happen until the area gets built out anyways.
So we could be looking at years prior to this
Yes,
happening.
yeah.
Will there be any, excuse me, any measures put in place for speeding along that area?
That's definitely something the town can look at if it's presenting an issue. There's nothing like set at this point in time.
I'm just looking for information to take back to my residents, because when we go back to them and they realize that, you know, this is being taken off the map and this won't be happening, and down the way we will be getting, and your explanation is reasonable why it's going to take some time before we're going to have traffic lights. But residents are going to want to know, well, in the meantime, what's going to happen there, because they're already making complaints about speeding in that area.
So the town has to urbanize the north segment of this street. They only did the southern portion, so we do have plans to basically do it and urbanize it. Perhaps through that, we can look at the speeding issues that you've indicated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And also, one more thing in the report, I noticed there was a comment in there with regards to parking, on-street parking. Was that referring to on-street parking on Church Street?
No, on-street parking would not be permitted on Church Street. That'd be the new roads that are going to be constructed through the subdivision.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Henry. Any other questions from committee? Seeing none, I will now open this meeting to the public and invite comments and questions. I'll go to the clerk to see if anybody wishes to virtually address the committee. Seeing a shake of the head. Anyone in person like to address the committee? Please come and step on up. If you don't mind just signing your name and the accessible DS right there. Write your name, and please note that each delegation will only have 5 minutes to address the committee. But it won't start till you get there, so don't rush. And if you just hit the button on the microphone, or no, I think you're good to go, right? All right, and your name, sir?
Yeah, that is on? The green light went off. Push there, okay. Good evening. The name is Brian Moss, MOSS. Mr. Chair, and to the balance of council, good evening. I'm a planner, and I'm representing the owners of what was called parcel number 4, the lands at the top end of the group, if you will. It's 44 hectares of property up there. It's right across from the Pine Ridge Memorial Gardens. The parcel commences about 100 meters south of Taunton Road, and is about 340 meters of frontage along Church Street. Much of the site will remain natural heritage, but there's some land that will be developable, and that's indicated in the HXOP as well as the regional OP. So in rough terms, it's probably in the range of 4 to 4.5 hectares will be developable. The balance will be set aside. The Tapa Bank was walked by the proponent in the fall of 21, so basically 2 years ago, with TRCA, and the drip line was established as well. So we have an idea of what we're working with. Beacon, ironically enough, Beacon Environmental has been hired as the environmental consultant to look at the property, and they also were part of the MESP work. So there's a continuity of consultant there. Our concern relates only to one item, and it is the aspect of stormwater and the overall picture of stormwater relative to the application being dealt with this evening. The only concern we have is that the assumptions made in the broader work, of which this owner was a non-participant at the time, and technically still is, the assumptions may need to be fine-tuned in terms of the amount of developable land on their property relative to flows and so on, and the designations. So it's a rather minor matter. It's virtually fine tuning. We would hope that the pond size that's being allocated to the Coghlan property is absolutely adequate. This might be a 1 or 2% difference. So that's the reason for the deputation and the comments. Our only concern is around the stormwater technical issues. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but that's the nature of the deputation.
Thank you very much. Any questions from committee to the delegate? Mayor Culler?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to hear staff comment on that. I've read the report. I did not see anything that indicated that stormwater was not adequate. Can you just comment on Mr. Moss's?
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Collier. So through the MESP process, which was development proponent driven, they did look at oversizing their stormwater management pond to accommodate the build out of the northern parcels. It's just like Mr. Moss has indicated, they were not participating owners, so we didn't have the development limits at that time. We didn't know the specific numbers. So there may be fine tuning, but the pond was definitely oversized, so it has been something that's been looked at.
Okay, so you have no concern with regards to the points that have been made?
Staff don't have concerns. I mean, if it was an issue, well, then it would be upon the new development proponent when they come in and formalize their applications to do additional measures.
Right now.
It would be the case for anything. Through the plan of subdivision process.
Subdivision.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your delegation.
Yeah, thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the committee on this matter? And nothing online. So seeing none, I will now close the public meeting portion of this item. Is the delegate or is the proponent online?
Yes, they are.
So I'd like to now invite the proponents to come forward if they wish and say a few words on their application. And if you don't mind, please state your name and affiliation with the application.
Okay to go? Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to the chair, members of committee. I'm Ian McCulloch of Coghlan Homes. I'd like to thank Eric and staff for bringing this report forward tonight after quite a lengthy and thorough background process. We've been going at this one for about 6 years, so it's exciting to be here tonight. And we just want to state that we're in agreement with the staff report and all of its recommendations and conditions. I will briefly speak to Mr. Moss's comments with regards to the stormwater. Through the approved MESP process, I assume his client denied us access on the lands. So what our consulting team did was a desktop review. So they looked at aerial photography and existing sort of Ontario base mapping type elevation work to include anything designated in the official plan as residential. Ultimately, there's 3 stormwater outlets identified for the lands west of Church between the Hydro Corridor and Taunton. One of them is to the north for the mixed commercial corridor. It'll have its own outlet, and I'm not sure where that property line would fall with respect to Mr. Moss's client's lands and the balance of the lands. Secondly, the stuff along Church Street up in that northern end would drain directly to Church Street, and sort of the inner island that was identified as developable through both the official plan and the desktop review of these lands would drain down into the pond. The MESP document is approved. We've been sharing it with the neighborhood, with the neighboring landowners that were and weren't participating. So you're welcome to get a copy of that if you want to reach out to us. Our consulting team is obviously open to fine tuning, but I believe what you're looking for has already been addressed. Again, we just couldn't do specific lines because your owner had denied us access when we were out there over the years doing field level studies. That's it. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. So I now have a resolution in front of me moved by Councillor Henry, seconded by Regional Councillor Crawford, that 1, the official plan amendment application OPA 23-A1 be endorsed, and that the implementing official plan amendment number 75, as provided in attachment 1 to this report, be considered for approval by council at a future council meeting. 2, that zoning bylaw amendment application Z3/22 be endorsed, and that the implementing zoning bylaw, as provided in attachment 2 to this report, be considered for approval by council at a future council meeting. And 3, the draft Plan of Subdivision Application S-A-2022-01 be approved subject to the conditions of draft approval substantially provided in attachment 3 to this report, and that staff be authorized to grant draft approval of the proposed draft plan of subdivision. Any questions, comments from the committee? We will call to vote then. And that passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 4.2, report number PDS-2023-33, final downtown and Pickering Village Community Improvement Program amendments. I believe we have Senior Planner Mike Sawchuk to present.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Sawchuk. I'm a senior planner with the town, and I will be speaking tonight on the Community Improvement Plan amendments. And I do want to mention that this will be the public statutory meeting for the CIP amendments. So how did we get here to where we are today? The CIP project goes back to 2019, when Council first raised concerns about the financial impacts of the CIP. And in response to that, in December 2019, Council approved a staff review of the downtown CIP, including the suspension of several of its constituent programs. That review was expanded in October 2020 to include the Pickering Village CIP, and at that time, several of the constituent programs in that CIP were also suspended. So it's been somewhat of a long road to get here. As mentioned, the project was initiated back in December 2019. Following that, in July 2020, we came forward to Council to receive authorization to move forward with the public consultation. In October 2020, the review was expanded to include the Pickering Village CIP, and then in December 2020, we moved forward with an amendment to the development charge bylaw in order to enact the program suspensions. Shortly thereafter, we did a council workshop to discuss different options with moving forward to the CIP review in December 2020. And then about 9 months later, we brought a report forward to consider the status of some of the in-progress CIP applications and how we would be handling those moving forward. In December 2021, we received authorization from Council to amend the CIPs rather than to eliminate them in their entirety. And then just last May, we brought forward the draft CIP amendments. So this is when we looked at the various programs that we would be moving forward with. From that meeting, we moved forward with public consultation over the summer. And that brings us to where we are today in October 23, where we're looking at finalizing the CIP amendments. So to summarize the direction that we're headed with the CIPs, both the downtown and Pickering Village CIPs have been reimagined in response to recent legislative changes, as well as those council concerns about the financial liability associated with the programs. Both the downtown and the Pickering Village CIP will be focused away from large redevelopment grants towards property improvement grants, which are far more modest in terms of their financial implications. The programs in each CIP will also be targeted to help achieve the specific planning objectives of both CIP areas, so the downtown and Pickering Village. Just to provide a quick overview to some of the changes that we'll be looking at for the downtown CIP, you can see that the main redevelopment programs, so these are the programs that had unlimited budget in the past, have been removed from the program, and we're looking to move forward with only 3 different programs in the downtown CIP. The first would be the Municipal Property Acquisition, Investment, and Partnership Program, And this is a program that's entirely town motivated, so there's no financial liability. We are looking to add 2 new property improvement programs, the first being the Commercial Property Accessibility and Beautification Grant Program, which has maximum grants of $7,500, and a new patio grant program, which has a maximum grant of $10,000. So all in all, we're looking to move forward with an annual budget for the downtown CIP of $30,000. However, I will mention that as a result of a motion made at the May 2023 meeting, we've made a commitment to bring any applications beyond that initial budget back for the consideration of council. The proposed changes to the Pickering Village CIP look quite similar. You'll see that through the center of this table here, all of the large redevelopment grants that had previously had unlimited budget have been removed from the program. We are looking at retaining the Facade Improvement Grant Program and the Sign Grant Program, which have demonstrated a lot of success over the last 10 years. And also introducing a Commercial Property Accessibility Grant Program, which has always been part and parcel of the Facade Improvement Grant Program in the past. As far as new programs, we're looking to add the Interior Renovation Grant Program, which has maximum grants of $15,000, a new Patio Grant Program with a maximum grant of $10,000, and then a Cash in lieu of Parking Equivalency Grant Program, which has a maximum budget per application of $20,000. With regard to the public consultation, we move forward with a couple of open house events on June 14th. In the afternoon, we held a meeting at Town Hall that attracted 15 participants, and then that evening, we held a meeting at the Quaker Meeting House where we received 11 participants. The open houses have been advertised to all property owners within the CIP areas, as well as all business owners in the CIP areas, and then any development industry partners that are active across the town of Ajax. With regard to the results of the consultation, many of the questions and comments that were received are outlined in the report that is attached with tonight's agenda. But most questions that we did receive are really aimed at determining what the impacts would be to property owners in those areas. So as an example, this afternoon, council would have been forwarded a letter that was received on Friday from a property owner in Pickering Village who is interested in knowing how these amendments would actually impact his ability to move forward with development in the future. So we have already provided a response to that gentleman. And in that case, most of the concerns were actually to do with the Pickering Village Heritage Conservation District and other items that really have more impact on redevelopment potential than the CIP does. Overall, there was no direct opposition to the proposed amendments, and I think this is largely because there's an understanding that the CIP is a discretionary tool that can be implemented by a town. There's no inherent right to municipal development incentives, so this is something that the town's putting forward as a way to attract certain developments within these two areas. I should also mention that many property owners have also expressed that they are very favorable to these amendments because it allows for them to access funding that in the past wouldn't have been available to them. So as a result of the public consultation, there were a few different changes made to the draft CIPs. With regard to the downtown CIP, eligibility for the Commercial Property Accessibility and Beautification Grant Program was expanded from just commercial properties to also include institutional properties. With regard to the Pickering Village program, accessibility projects were removed as eligible components of the Facade Improvement Program, and that was separated out into a new Commercial Property Accessibility Grant Program. The reason for this is that we wanted to make these grants available to both heritage and non-heritage properties. The last change that was made was as a result of comments we received from the region of Durham. We removed section 1.4 of the CIP, which had previously outlined the Durham region's regional revitalization program. The reason that they requested removal of that section is because that program was only really relevant when we were having these large redevelopment programs. Now that we had removed the redevelopment programs from our CIP, it didn't make sense to keep that section about their equivalent program. With regard to next steps, if approved by council tonight, the implementing bylaws will be presented at the council meeting of October 16th, 2023. Immediately following that, staff will issue a notice of decision, and that initiates a 20-day appeal period. If no appeals are received, staff will update all CIP application forms and develop a marketing plan in order to familiarize property owners in these areas with the new CIP programs. And then the last step to this would really be moving forward with the budgets through the 2024 operating budget. And that would be looking to provide a budget of $120,000 for the Pickering CIP, Pickering Village CIP, and $30,000 for the downtown CIP. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for that presentation. Any questions to committee regarding the presentation? I see Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sawchuk, for your continued focus and stewardship of our heritage properties throughout the town, specifically to Pickering Village. Thank you for this report. So just to bring clarity, you did touch on it a little bit, but this CIP report, this community improvement report, plan, I should say, basically speaks to facades, doors, windows, things of that nature on businesses in the village, and doesn't speak to expansion, development, correct?
So through the chair to Councillor Tyler Moran, for the most part, yes. So what we've done is we've moved the programs away from the large redevelopment programs that were looking at attracting much more dense development, that sort of thing. That was already happening. That was happening whether or not the town would provide financial incentives. So what we're trying to do is scale back these programs and provide property-based incentives, such as facade grants, as you mentioned. But we're also looking at attracting particular uses to the Pickering Village area. So by introducing something like a interior renovation program that is eligible only to restaurants, retail stores, museums, and art galleries, we're really hoping to bring those types of uses into the village, because it always has been our goal to make the village the cultural hub for the community, and those are the types of uses that we really need to achieve that.
Okay. If I may, do you know how many businesses this would sort of apply to? How many businesses is in the village-ish?
It's a good question. I
So
don't have...
75 perhaps-ish?
I think it would be greater than that, because this is a larger area than the Heritage Conservation District, for example.
Right.
And in the Heritage Conservation District, I do know there are 58 properties, and many of those properties are home to several businesses. So the CIP area is actually quite a bit broader. It stretches out east along Kingston Road to around Rotherglen. It also goes south down Church Street, right about to the 401.
Okay.
So I would think that you're probably looking at, a couple hundred businesses within that area.
Okay, so let's say 200. That's great. Specifically to the signs, I saw the signs weren't included, meaning the actual Welcome to Pickering Village signs that we see at the Duffins Creek Bridge and that we see just, I believe, west of Rotherglen on the north side. There's signs there. Is there any plans for those signs to be improved, or is that not connected to this?
No, so that's not connected to this,
Okay.
because those would be town assets. But this program is looking at signage for private businesses.
I understand.
So the idea there, and this is a program that's been up and running for 10 years that we're looking to continue. What it's aimed at doing is helping pay the additional expense that comes along with producing signs that have heritage character to them. So these are generally wooden signs, that sort of thing. So we can provide grants up to $2,500 per property for
Okay.
that.
And my final question, if I may, in the past, how often have businesses used this grant program from the town? Is it very popular? Is there reserves sometimes? How did it work in the past? Because there's a process, right? You have to apply,
Sure.
you have to be eligible.
Yeah, and there have been ebbs and flows with the program. There have been years where we only used about half of the funding available to us. There are other years where we've had to turn away applicants because we had committed right up to the $75,000 that had been available for Pickering Village in the past. So this year, for example, I think we're on pace to spend 72 of the $75,000. and there were a couple eligible applicants that I had to turn away because there wouldn't be additional funding available.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Those are my questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Henry.
Hi, and thank you for your presentation. Very informative. Quick question here with regards to page 18. We're discussing revised downtown CIP, and in the news section where it says commercial properties accessibility and beautification grant program. I'm noticing here that in the rationale that it says encouraging local businesses owners to improve accessibility and aesthetics of their properties. So my question would be, if a business owner was to come forward, could they apply for one part under this grant and not the other? Could they apply for aesthetics and not for the accessibility piece?
So through the chair to Councillor Henry, yes. So although it is captured within one program, there's sort of two tiers to it. The beautification component provides grants up to $2,500. The accessibility component provides grants up to $5,000. So an applicant could apply for one or the other, or they could in fact apply for both at the same time.
So knowing that we have many businesses in the village where accessibility improvements are very much needed to be brought up to AODA compliance, would it not be prudent to have those attached to each other? Therefore, if you wanted the aesthetics, you know, you applied for the other, if your property did not meet standards already, and it was a package deal, and thus help bring forth the accessibility part of the component faster in development in that area, thus making it more accessible to all sooner rather than later. Could there not be an attachment with that, with these two grants together? It seems to me like, I get it, it's great, let's beautify it. But if I can't get into it, the beauty's not helping me.
True. So I can definitely see how certain properties would benefit from doing both at the same time, and they are eligible under the CIP to do that. But there have been plenty of situations where properties need either one or the other. So for example, a few years ago, there was an application to provide a sort of electronic mechanism on the door so that there was a press button and the door would automatically open. That building was in very good shape, so there was very little work that had to be done. Their grant application was entirely for the accessibility component, and I think it served us quite well that we could provide funding for that without forcing them into doing some other minor beautification project just to become eligible for the funding. So I think having them as separate funding streams is the most advantageous way to approach this, because that way we can look at these as different things, and each building does have a different set of needs. There are some buildings out there that require some beautification, but they already do meet the current standards for accessibility, so they wouldn't need that additional funding. The way that the program is designed right now really allows anyone to come forward for only the work that they need to do.
I understand what you're saying, and in the examples you gave, I would agree with you. But in the example that I'm giving is if you have an owner that has both needs and only applies for the aesthetic part of it, and we're going to give them, as the town of Ajax, money to do that, but yet they haven't met the AODA requirements, and there's funding available, but they didn't apply for it. And that's my concern, because we're giving folks money to beautify something where maybe their property is not up to the AODA standard, and therefore other folks can't access the property. So my concern is with the opposite example to which you gave. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we could put a safeguard in place so for when folks are applying for this grant, we are saying to them, sure, you meet the standards, and yes, you can have the grant for the aesthetics. However, there's some work to be done here with the AODA compliance, and we'd also like you to apply for this part of the grant because we feel that this is, you know, a beauty is wonderful, but if you can't access the store to shop, you've got a barrier up. And I'd like to see that kind of, we be the forefront in moving that forward to help meet those requirements sooner than later, is what I'm saying. I'm just putting that to you and, you know, your team and how that's going to be accomplished. But I didn't want to let this opportunity go by without speaking to this genuine need in the community and especially in the Pickering Village, because there is a lot there, a lot of beauty, a lot of shops, a lot of potential,
Councillor
great
Henry.
businesses.
Sorry, we just want to keep this questions to the report. And I
Yes.
get the point, and I think the planner will take this away with the staff.
Sure, yep, absolutely. So, and just to respond very
Please.
quickly to that, one thing that I think we have been quite good with in the past is when we do recognize there are shortcomings at a property or there are things that could be improved, we are always encouraging the property owners to apply to make those repairs or make those improvements. So if there is a case where we do see somebody apply for a beautification grant and we know they could also benefit from the accessibility grant, we will absolutely try to push them on that to ensure that they do apply for both, because it serves their best interest as well. It's access to funding that will in the long run help their business.
Excellent. And just for clarification purposes again, where is the funds for this program coming from?
So these will be assigned through the operating budget, as they have been in the past for a component of the Pickering Village CIP program,
Through the operating
through
budget,
the operating budget.
which is from the tax base.
I believe so.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mayor Colliers next. Sorry, no, I looped in Councillor Barrett. Councillor Barrett, if you could just re-add yourself.
There we go.
Mayor Collier.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up quickly on Councillor Tyler Moran's question about the entry signs, those were part of a BIA initiative, so they were paid through the BIA levy around 2005. They still look pretty good though, coming and going in through the village. Mr. Sawchuk, can you please speak to the land purchase section? What is it called here? The Municipal Property Acquisition Investment and Partnership Program. And specifically, can you give me an example of a property in our downtown that this could potentially apply to?
So through the chair to Mayor Collier, the only time this program has been used in the past was for the development at Harwood and Bailey. So the Pat Bailey Square development. And so really it's a program to help strategically acquire properties that the town thinks it should be more involved in the redevelopment of. So it's entirely a program that we have full control over. We exercise when we want to initiate this program or if we want to initiate this program. And that is the reason that we maintained it as part of the CIP, was because it really didn't provide any liability. There's no way for any property owners to apply for grants under that program or to enter into agreements that'll put the town on the hook for anything. It is purely a program that we can apply when we decide that it's necessary.
Well, I thought we already had a program like that. It's called expropriation, which is how we got those lands at Pat Bailey Square.
Yes, so expropriation can be a big part of this program, and this is really just a program to, it obviously doesn't provide the power of expropriation, but it kind of helps lay out the details of how we could move forward with something like expropriation in a situation where we did want to take over lands and ensure redevelopment.
Okay, and any funding for this would just come back to council and to the treasurer and would come from, we have no current reserve.
So I believe there is a reserve that exists partially from CIP funding in the past that's been put aside through things like with building permit rebates in the past, we rebated 80% of the building permit and then 20% would go towards this reserve. What was proposed at the May 2023 meeting is that any funds under the downtown CIP or the Pickering Village CIP that went unspent each year would then be moved into this reserve. So over time, it will build, and then the town has access to those funds for any project that they decide is to be carried out in one of these CIP areas.
Okay, but that reserve doesn't exist today.
It does exist today.
What is the balance of that reserve?
I don't have the exact budget, but I could look into that and report back.
Okay. Would you be looking for funding outside of that, assuming there was only, I don't know, 100,000 balance in that CIP reserve and the property was $1 million, for instance? Like, I'm just trying to understand the intent.
Yeah, in a case like that, I would imagine there would have to be some sort of external funding that was sought for that. But like I said, I will follow up with colleagues in finance, and we can let you know about what the balance is in that account.
Okay, just following up again on some of Councillor Tyler Moore's questions about the type of things that could be eligible, like cleaning, painting of facades, repair, replacement of decorative entrance treatments, canopies, repair, replacement of cladding materials, replacement of storefront window door assemblies, addition of decorative lighting, upgrading of existing fixtures, hardscaping, walkways, permanent planters, pavers. I'm having trouble understanding why these items should fall on the back of the taxpayers, why we should be using, in this case, general levy. This will require a property tax increase to do. Why we should be, I guess, taking those costs and giving them to private business and resident owners on the backs of other taxpayers in the town of Ajax.
So in response to that, I think there are two different answers depending on whether we're looking at the downtown CIP or the Pickering Village CIP. In the case of Pickering Village, the town has made a commitment to wanting to ensure the character of that area with the historic properties, that sort of thing. And oftentimes, those types of repairs are somewhat more expensive than repairing a modern building. So when this CIP was initiated back in 2014, the idea was we want to do as much as we can to encourage these property owners to do their part in restoration and maintaining that character. When you look at the downtown area, the size of the grants is much smaller. For the beautification component, it's only $2,500 per property per grant. So the idea with that program, it just really revolves around upkeep. And I'm sure we're all familiar with the state of some of the properties in the downtown, and they could look a little better. And just providing that slight financial incentive is sometimes enough to get these property owners to take the steps to do their part and make the area look a little better. So in general, I think the idea is that by providing a small financial incentive, we can go a long way in terms of improving the aesthetics of these areas.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair Lee. Good evening, Mr. Sawchuk. Nice to see you. Thank you for the presentation. Many of my questions have been asked. I did want to comment on the list of eligible, applications for the beautification I'm talking about the downtown CIP. So did you say it's 2,500 or 7,500?
So through the chair to Councillor Bauer, it is overall 7,500, but that includes 2,500 for beautification projects and 5,000 for accessibility projects.
Okay. And I noticed one of the items that's not included is to do with fencing, fencing of areas. So unless I guess it was part of a patio, is that right?
Well, I would have to look more closely at the eligibility requirements. I believe that external, like landscaping improvements and that sort of thing can be considered. Off the top of my head, I would think that fencing could be included as well, but I would have to double check on that to confirm.
Okay, that would be great because I'm thinking mostly of the downtown plaza and some of the issues that are happening at the front of the building and also around at the back of the building, so it's all visible. Where there's been vandalism, vagrancy, robbery, garbage, all kinds of stuff. And where some of the suggestions or what some of the business owners would like to do is erect permanent fencing in order to block the area from being accessed and also to make it visually more appealing. So I'm just thinking of some of the objectives listed on pages 75 and 76 of the agenda, the objective of the downtown CIP, where it says to improve the image and appearance of the area, because much of the development in the downtown is aging and shows visible signs of deterioration, to improve the pedestrian amenity and safety of the area, including the downtown's function as a major transit hub, and to enhance private sector investment opportunities and property maintenance. So I think having the ability to apply for funding to put up a fence. It really does make sense in that way when you look at that listing. So I just wanted to confirm that that would be an eligible item.
Sure. So I'm just looking through the eligibility requirements now. And so the second to last item is hard landscaping such as walkways, permanent planters, pavers for entranceways, and decorative ornamental fencing. So fencing is included. But then there also is the last item there is a little open-ended, and that's done with purpose to give us some discretion in other types of projects that we think are reasonable. So the last item is other similar repairs or improvements which the town in its sole discretion determines are important to incorporate as an integral part of site beautification. So even if something isn't specifically mentioned as an eligible item, we have a little bit of discretion in determining whether or not it could help to achieve the goals of the CIP. And if it could, I think we would try to make a case for it being an eligible item.
Wonderful. And who determines that? And if an application is denied, is there ability to appeal?
So in terms of who reviews the applications, first that would come through staff in the planning section, and the approval authority would be the director of planning and development. In terms of appeals or anything like that, there is no availability for appeals through these processes, and that's been, again, done strategically. We feel that at the staff level, we have a very good understanding of what the goals and objectives are for these areas. So we're very willing to approve any of the projects that fall in line with those. Any projects that don't, I think we're in a good place to make that call as well. So we didn't really want to provide an appeal process and then get caught up in all the administration that would come along with that, especially for something that's a $2,500 grant. Spend hours and hours in appeals and that sort of thing really wouldn't be in keeping with our general intention through the program.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Wonderful. Those are the questions I had.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Regional Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Sawchuk, thank you for your report. So as I understand it, this is out of the operating budget because it's a grant. Is that right? Because it seems kind of backwards because it's almost addressing almost all capital, but because of the process, it falls under operating.
So through the chair to Regional Councillor Crawford, yes, I think that there's already been an established process for the Pickering Village Facade Improvement Program and the Sign Grant Program where we've received these funds through the operating budget. I think that generally, anything that goes through the capital budget is for town assets. So yes, I mean, in a roundabout way, the fact that these are grants that are outgoing to property owners, that's the reason it goes through operating budget.
Okay, thanks. Your public consultation meeting, your first one was 15 and the second one was 10. Of the 15, do you know how many were from the downtown? Were they kind of a group of them all together, or did they separate?
So the reason we provided the two different locations for the meeting was to accommodate people in the downtown and then after that people in Pickering Village, and that seemed to work well because everybody at the first meeting had a property within the downtown area, and all the people at the second meeting did have a property within the Pickering Village limits.
Good.
So those meetings were very well aligned with the people that attended, and that allowed us to speak on a more detailed basis to the types of questions and concerns that they had as well. Like I said during the presentation, there wasn't a single case where somebody was opposed to what we were proposing with the amendments. In nearly every case, the interest of the person making the inquiries was to find out how this program would impact their property. And then in many other cases, people attended the meetings because there were related items, maybe not CIP related, but development or planning related that they just wanted an ear to speak to in regard to some questions about those projects. So the intentions for why people came, I think, were very mixed, but for the most part, I think people had all of their questions answered.
And was it your sense that you would be seeing applications for this money?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we already have a great record with the Pickering Village program. There's already a lot of property owners that are aware of it. I've already received a couple inquiries this year about the internal renovation program from property owners looking at potentially developing restaurant spaces in the village. So I think there will be a lot of interest. This is something that would be fairly new for the downtown. I mean, the CIP has always existed or not always existed, but has existed for a number of years in the downtown, but was really focused only on large redevelopment projects. So I think it'll take some work on our part to get the message out to property owners in the downtown. But once they do know that funding is available, I'm quite certain whenever you sort of dangle that carrot out there for these funds, that people do come looking for them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Regional Councillor Crawford. Any other questions from committee? Seeing none, I will now go to the public portion of this meeting and invite the public to for comments and questions. I'll go to the clerk to see if anybody wishes to virtually address the committee.
No, there is not, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone in the gallery? All right, seeing none, then we will close this off. There's no applicant or consultant in this case, so I now have a resolution moved by Councillor Dyes, seconded by Councillor Crawford, that one, the council approve the proposed amendments to the Downtown Community Improvement Plan and staff be authorized to forward the implementing bylaw to the October 16, 2023 council meeting, and that council approve the proposed amendments to the Pickering Village Community Improvement Plan and staff be authorized to forward the implementing bylaw to the October 16, 2023 council meeting. We have any questions? We see Mayor Collier.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm looking for some direction from the clerk on this. And then I would like to speak to it as far as I can't support this. I will either move a motion which seems to me opposite of what's in front of us, that council not approve, or would it be better for me to hold off until this potentially fails and then move a second motion directing staff, which I have prepared?
I would recommend that the committee vote on the recommendation before you and vote it down if the committee wishes to, and then at that time you could propose what you wish to propose.
Okay, thank you. I would like to speak to this, please, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I read this earlier, and I'm really struggling with this. And I feel a little bit bad as far as directing and supporting staff to keep looking at this as most recently as last May. But quite honestly, a lot has changed in the last year from a budget perspective. And over the last couple of years, we are in a very different place budget-wise than perhaps we were when this project started. But right now, the thought of putting $150,000 in the budget this year, and that money is a tax increase on the backs of all residents of the town of Ajax to support improvements to certain residents and business owners in the town for appearance in a lot of cases of their property, I just can't support. This is going to be the mayor's budget this year, as the new rules state. I don't have any intention of putting this money in the budget. That would have to come through council in January. These are pretty tough times, and we've heard clearly, and I've honestly heard more in this last year about the budget pressures, and I know about the budget pressures, both operation and capital, than any other years. I also will go back a little bit in history to when I sat on both the downtown BIA before I was on council, as a local business owner in the plaza across the road, and trying to get any facade improvements. We brought many things forward, and there was just no appetite amongst the owners with incentives or with not. And same with the Pickering Village BIA. I was on the Pickering Village BIA from the first time I got elected in 2003 till I think when Councillor Crawford took over in 2010. And in the last 20 years, other than some signage and a little bit of improvement that was done through the BIA levy of $50,000 a year, there was nothing done. The town undertook a project, I think it was a couple $100,000 to redo Old Kingston Road, which we did at our expense. But since then, I mean, no matter all the things we tried, I haven't seen any development in the village, and I don't know that this is going to get us where we need to be. I find I have a problem with this. It doesn't speak to affordability. A lot of these houses, a lot of these businesses are well into millions of dollars. I did see in here that nobody that has a lien on their property could apply. I assume that means a mortgage as well, but I'm not sure. So just a lien, well, anyway. But, I mean, I would, if I was one of these, with these building owners, sure, I'd love to get some money from the town to help me improve my property. But there's nothing asking what my income in it is and what my affordability is and what all these other parts are. It's just free money in that case. It could be somebody, I know a few of them, millionaires many times over, they don't need help from the town. But it would be free money to them, and I just cannot support that on the backs of the other residents. So I will urge my colleagues to please vote this down tonight. I will not be supporting it. I will be, well, we're having a recorded vote anyway, and if it does not pass, I do have another motion that I will bring forward, which will be directing staff to the wrap-up of the CIP for both the downtown and for the Pickering Village. And I'll just add one more point, because some might talk about Pat Bailey Square, as we talked about earlier. We as a council, and as part of this council, and Councillor Dyes, you were as well, expropriated that land to the tune of something like $12-point-something million. And then we had to give, I think it was in the neighborhood, including a reduced price on the land. I think we sold the land for $9 that we paid $12.5 for, but with other incentives, DCs and tax reductions, $28 million total over 20 years. That's the number I think in my head. It's in the 20s anyway, which we still have to pay. And this council, last council, last term, came upon that hard fact that even though we offer these incentives, we still had to come up with the money on the tax base to pay these DCs. Even though we don't collect them, we still have to pay them. And this is similar, and we have to go back to the taxpayer to get that money, which I just can't do. So we did that then because I think then that's what we needed to do to incent the redevelopment of the downtown. I don't think today we're in that case. We have applications on most of the vacant lands that we have in town, not all, but most. I'm working on a few of the others still. We will get there. And they're here because Ajax is a good place to develop. Ajax is a good place to be. Our DCs and taxes are already in line with everybody else. We don't need to be offering incentives at this time for this. So for all those reasons, I would ask for your non-support of this, and we can move forward in a different direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Chair. The AODA requirements for 2025 that my colleague rightly brought up, Councillor Henry, there's no direct correlation between the CIP. That's a provincial thing that all businesses have to abide by 2025, correct? That's correct. Okay. And my signs, hopefully they can get fixed, isn't tied in either. So there are almost 2,000 businesses in Ajax. And at the Pickering Village is about 200. It's where I represent, along with Marilyn Crawford. It's dear to my heart. Right now, there's thousands of families, probably thousands of families in the town that are struggling. Try to keep up with inflation. We've had big asks of the taxpayer already with our snow removal program. We have other incentives that we want to bring forth. I don't want to frame this as a vanity project because it's no disparaging, remark to any of my friends that have businesses in the village. But I'm trying to make a good decision here, and the taxpayer is really stretched. Everybody's paying $5,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a year in property tax. So to lop off $150,000 on improvements, but diplomatically, I'll say I can't support this at this time because I really like what you do, and I love that you keep, a tab in the village on all these different properties, and I hope you can still control the development and encourage it, but monetarily, I don't think it's a responsible thing to do. So at this time, I can't support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair Lee. So I just had a question to the mayor on his comments, where you said you have no intention of putting this in the budget, even if this motion passes. Is that accurate?
Mayor Collier?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Councillor Bauer. Yeah, the budget, I'll be bringing forward the budget on December the 18th for council. It will be released to the public on January 2nd. It is the mayor's budget. It's what I bring forward. And then it's up to council if they want to amend it after the fact. But I will not be putting this in. That was correct.
Okay. Thank you. And then I had another question about the motion that has been put forward by Regional Councillors Dyes and Crawford, where we have items 1 and items 2 voting together. Is it possible that we could separate them and vote on item 1 and separately vote on item 2? And I guess maybe I'll speak to why. We have 150,000. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, a motion to separate is always in order. I believe you'll still need a seconder with our procedure bylaw.
Okay.
Pardon me, I believe under our procedure bylaw, I'm just going to double check that any member can request a separation, and it is just so, it doesn't require an
Just a straight up
affirmative
vote,
vote.
correct? Thank you. So that answers that question, and then I'll let you proceed, Councillor Bauer.
I'm sorry, I just,
Sorry, yeah. A motion to separate is in order. You do not require a seconder. So
Okay.
did you want to do that now, or did you want to go ahead and speak first?
Mr. Chair,
I guess it's
there's no resolution required to divide a question. Any member can request it,
Oh,
and then it will just be divided.
Well, congratulations, Councillor Bauer. This is a first for our new procedure bylaw. Consider both points separated then. So we'll vote on each point
Okay.
separately.
Okay, and can I speak to why
Please.
I requested?
Actually, there's no need to speak on why, because we are going to separate them. They are separated. So if you'd like to speak on your comments and questions, please do.
Absolutely. So, which will really answer the question why anyway. But thank you, Chair. So definitely Pickering Village CIP and Downtown CIP, two separate entities. The areas themselves, two separate areas, business owners, patrons, everything. It's all part of the same town, but they're very different and unique for sure. There's a huge difference between 30,000 and 120,000. And when I look at the 30,000 potential grant for downtown in an area that, you know, we've talked about this several times this term alone, about the struggling plaza, the struggling downtown core for various reasons, and what are ways that we can help. And it's not only by supporting, you know, you see it, you talk with residents, you see it on social media, where it's all about helping, you know, visit those stores, shop in those areas, you know, really spend your money there, your hard-earned money there to help the economy thrive there. So part of that, I believe, is talking about those objectives, about creating a safe environment, a much more aesthetically pleasing environment for, you know, a deteriorating part of our town, all of those things. So I think, although it is coming from the operational budget, $30,000 to help a specific area in our town that we have all agreed in several meetings needs our help, this is a way that we can help them. So I will support that. The 120,000, 4 times the size of a budget. We've heard the ward councillors, or at least one ward councillor, who has made arguments, and so I'm kind of picking and choosing one over the other, and so I'm hoping to get that support for the downtown CIP for this year. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Next, we have Regional Councillor Crawford.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Sawchuk. Would you have the numbers on how many people, or what the dollar figure of each of the downtown and the Pickering Village have accessed in the last year? Maybe not, well, maybe last year's a hard one because I think we paused it. Yeah, so the last time we had it available.
Sure. So through the chair to Regional Councillor Crawford, in terms of the Pickering Village program, there were two programs that were not suspended as part of the CIP suspension, and that was the facade improvement program and the grant program. The reason that those weren't suspended is because they always had a fixed budget of $75,000 a year. So really what we were looking to do was to reduce the financial liability that went along with these redevelopment projects that could literally lock us into hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars a year in terms of incentives. So at that time that the suspensions were happening, we felt it was reasonable to continue on with those two programs. So they have been operational through the suspensions. This year with the Pickering Village CIP, we've committed about $72,000 of the $75,000 budget. So very close to the limit. In terms of the downtown, we have never had these property incentive programs available. It's always only been the redevelopment programs.
The facades.
No, so even larger than that.
Okay.
The planning rebates, the tax increment program, the development charge exemptions. So these major projects, which is what we dealt with through Pat Bailey Square. The suspensions essentially were enacted to prevent another situation like that, where the town got in a sense over its head in terms of locking into these commitments that were going to take years upon years to pay off.
Right.
So there have never been in the downtown programs like facade programs or sign grant programs, anything like that. So I don't have any numbers to share with you on the downtown.
Okay, I understand what you mean. I'm really torn because with the village, we created a heritage district, which, to your very point, repairs do cost more. And to Mayor Collier's point too, some of the buildings that are owned and they rent out have the ability to do their own repairs and shouldn't really be accessing taxpayer money. Some of the buildings are owned though, and they don't have the extra revenue. So I'm a little torn. I love the village. I would love to see it become more vibrant. I don't know if it can do that on its own. I don't know that. And for the downtown, we put a shelter and a respite there, and they have been struggling to recover for many years. And I feel like $30,000 is the least we can do if somebody wanted to access it. But I am also very cognizant of the fact that we are in tough times, and every dollar does count when it comes to a budget. So I really am torn about what to do. I really am. So just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Regional Councillor Dyes.
Thank you. To Mr. Sawchuk, when we talk about the downtown, there's an automatic assumption it's the Ajax Plaza only. What are the boundaries of that downtown CIP?
So through the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes, the actual boundaries of the downtown CIP are available within the agenda. So it would be the last page of the downtown CIP. I will try to describe them quickly here to you. So the area does go as far north as Highway 401, as far south as Clements Road. Generally, the western boundary is, it does sort of jag in and out, but Monarch, and it juts out a little further than that in some areas, right out to Mackenzie. And then on the east side, generally speaking, anything north of Bailey, it incorporates all properties just on the western side of Harwood. And then it does expand a little further to the west when you get south of Bailey to include like the buildings around Falby in that area. But it is definitely an area that's much larger than just the Ajax Plaza.
Thank you for that. And also, it's my understanding, because of plaza being a kind of different situation than other plazas where the town owns the parking lot or the property, but the actual businesses were individually owned, and some are owned, some people own more than one now. So when we talk about accessibility upgrades, like, how are we going to address that if we own up to the door of the business? But my understanding is if you're going through the disability.
We don't own that.
Sorry, do we
So I'm
own?
talking about the downtown plaza and some of the challenges that we face when we're doing redevelopment, what we can and can't do there. And the reason that there was never any kind of agreement between the landowners was because they own the buildings. And we've been through that before in the 80s, where it just didn't happen because they didn't want to pay for that. So there are challenges. It's a different type of a situation that other plazas don't have because of the ownership. So I guess my question is about any kind of upgrades for accessibility and how that would work in the plaza.
So any applications would be left to the property owner themselves. So generally speaking, when we're talking about accessibility upgrades, it could be anything from ramps on the exterior to, as I mentioned before, push button entry systems. In some cases, I think we've explicitly said within the parameters for the grant, it could be internal to the building as well if there were narrow spaces, that sort of thing. But essentially, it would be left upon the property owner. I think you are right in terms of Ajax Plaza being a bit of a different context than a modern plaza where you have one landowner leasing out the spaces. In this scenario, you have a multitude of property owners that have a very small space to take care of. So it is a bit of a different scenario, but I think in either case, a program like this could be eligible and could go a long way in terms of helping these property owners sort of spruce up their property.
So with respect to fencing in the back, would that be our responsibility or the property owner's responsibility?
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar enough with the exact sort of protocols and the boundaries of what's public land there and what's private. So I think we'd have to look into that a little more closely and report back.
Sorry, Director Romaneski?
Yeah, through the chair to Regional Councillor Dias. If it's a fence on town land, then it would be the town constructing potentially that fence through some type of internal process.
My understanding is the back of the plaza, is that roadway, is that town land?
Yes, that actually used to be Commercial Avenue when Commercial Avenue went north and south with a tree-lined median, which is the boulevard of the plaza right now. So yes, those lands are owned by the town of Ajax, directly behind the plaza up to the rear walls.
On all of the,
For most of it, it gets a little kind of checkerboardy as we get up towards Station Street with the car wash and the beer store, the mosque, and the other plaza that's right across from, right across from Hubbard Station.
okay, thank you. That clarifies it for me. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, Regional Councillor Dies. Next, we have Councillor Henry.
Thank you. Question to Councillor Dye's question. If we as the town own the property in behind the plaza, we own that property, why would we give a grant to a business to put a fence on property we own?
I don't think we would in that case. We would only be approving grants for fences on properties proper that individual property owners owned.
So this grant might not solve the problem for those business owners, correct?
I don't think it would, through the chair to Councillor Henry. I think redeveloping the plaza over time would be probably the best case scenario. I don't know if building a fence around the plaza would make sense, or if there's opportunity to, where this fence is going to be located. Is it in the back? What's the purpose of it? It's communal parking back there too, so we have to keep that in mind. Staff through, I believe it was the previous council meeting was directed to carry out a SEPTED audit of the Ajax Plaza, and we are working on that. We can take that element into our consideration through that evaluation. If that makes sense to you, Councillor Henry.
It does, and my question then would be, do we know, for instance, up until, like, Councillor Dice has made it very clear to what point in the front of the property, what we own as the town of Ajax, in the back, is it the same to the door we own, or is it
In the
5 feet from the door, or depending on property?
I don't have the survey in front of me, but
Sorry, I just want to address Mayor Collier's comment to me, and just for clarification purpose, so I understand. Do we or do we not own the property in the front of the building, the parking lot?
currently that property is going through a legal process with the receivership. The receivership group is currently the custodial owner of these lands. However, these lands are going through a legal process as the town was awarded through the courts the land back. And the receivership group, whom I've reported this council several times before on, is the custodial owner of those lands until a development application and bid is brought forward.
Thank you for that clarification, and thank you, Mayor Collier, for that. Thank you for that clarification. So in the back of the building, sorry, I did interrupt you, and I do apologize for that because the comment came at me. So in the back of the building, again, we don't know to what point.
I'm fairly confident through the chair to the councillor that it goes right up to the back wall of the buildings themselves.
That we own as a town?
That we own as the town.
Oh.
But I also want to clarify that the receivership ownership or custodial ownership is for the parking field, not the drive aisles around the plaza and not right up to the front doors of the plaza.
Yes, but I'm just referring to.
That is owned by the town.
Sorry, what part's owned by the town in the
The
front?
drive aisles in the plaza.
Yes.
So when you come off and you drive like in front of CIBC and the Daisy Mart and the Home Hardware and you're driving along,
Yes.
that's town-owned land.
Yes.
And the sidewalk up to the front of the storefronts, that's town-owned land. That's not part of the receivership
Oh, so
proposal.
there is a
It's
separation.
the parking field.
Excellent. Okay.
Yes.
So we own that part.
Yeah, it's public right away.
And we believe we own the part in the back.
We do.
So then why would we as the town be giving grants to businesses for ourselves to build fences?
Like I said, Councillor, through the chair, I don't know if in this instance, as the proposal for a fence would be something that, under my discretion as the approver of these grants, would support. It'd have to be a fence on the property. It speaks specifically to decorative or ornate fencing. We're not talking necessarily privacy fencing here. I think the idea is that if you're going to that level to do some type of beautification on your property, you're going to want it to make it look good, right? And it's not to build a wall necessarily, or a
Understood.
fence as like a privacy barrier or something like that.
I apologize. My comment was more relating to the information that was received by Councillor Bauer when she was talking about fencing in the back. So that's what I was referring to.
Correct.
My apologies.
No problem.
And when you say beautification, what beautification would the owners of the stores be able to do with this grant money in the front of the building to which we own the property up until their door?
I'll leave that to Mr. Sawchuk to answer, but I'm imagining it has something to do with the facade of the building, maybe some signage, those types of kind of aesthetic treatments to front facades of storefronts.
That's right. So through the chair to Councillor Henry, in my response to Councillor Bauer about the fencing, if the question was specifically about the Ajax Plaza, I wasn't aware of that, so I apologize. In my answer, I was talking about situations where, as the director has said, the fencing was actually on private property. So we would never provide a grant that relates to publicly owned property. All of these grants have to be to private property. It's the property owner who makes the application, and by means of that, the work has to be done on their property. So for accessibility grants in Ajax Plaza, we wouldn't be funding things like ramps on the public right-of-way. What we might fund would be a door system, like the example I gave before, that automatically opens the door, because that is part of the building that they do own. So then they could apply for something like that.
Understood. And specifically for this property, and only this property is my question, is we are looking, as Director Romanowski just mentioned, redevelopment. So we're going to give grants for property we hope to have redeveloped?
So part of the reason that the level of the grants has been kept so low in comparison to Pickering Village is Pickering Village, we're looking to provide substantial grants because the end goal is in perpetuity restoration, conservation of these properties. In the downtown area, we're looking at small grants because we want people to be able to make their properties look presentable for however many years it takes until they are redeveloped. In the downtown, the end goal for most properties is generally redevelopment. So that is all played into the level of grant that we'd be willing to provide.
Understood. Okay, it's making more sense to what Mayor Collier said with regard, I know, it's making more sense from this perspective. So, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. Regional Councillor Crawford, for the second time, any other councillors? Oh, no, actually, Regional Councillor Crawford, please. Yeah, I don't. Oh, you disappeared, I'm sorry.
Habit. I don't mean to disagree with Director Romanowski, but the behind of the plaza, so the convenience store that in question is private property. Right behind the convenience store.
Yes, that's what I said. I said around the beer store, behind the
Yeah.
convenience store, that might be a little bit sketchy. I'm not too sure of the ownership
Yeah.
through there. I know behind the plaza proper and along the front, Pita Delights, all around the corner where the pavilion is,
Right.
that's owned by the town.
It's the strangest setup I've ever.
It's a very kind
There's
of
like
odd
11
ownership in that part, in that kind of northwest corner of
Yeah.
that plaza at
Yeah.
Station and Commercial.
Yeah, it's very odd. So I believe the fencing that Councillor Bauer was referring to was around that for security measures more than beautification. Although in the end would be beautified because then the dumpster wouldn't be always full, right? So like it's kind of a, twofold. But that was my only point, was that one area right directly behind the stores, they're all private. Because I know I've tried to get them cleaned up and we can't go in there, so yeah. Anyway, that's my only.
No, not at all. Councillor Bauer for the second time.
Thank you, Chair Lee, and thank you, Regional Councillor Crawford. That was the fencing that I was talking about. So thank you, and thank you for the clarifications there, Director Romanowski and Mr. Sawchuk. That's it.
Thank you. Any other councillors for a second time? Councillor Henry?
Question is to the director, Director Romanowski. I'm going to put you on the spot. I do apologize. Do you see the grant in relation to the downtown Ajax Plaza, in relation to the fence that we're speaking of only, that for this particular area, do you see this as a benefit?
Through the chair to Councillor Henry, I'd like to move away from the conversation about the money, and maybe we can talk more about the program.
Okay.
And what this program provides council the ability to do in the future.
Okay.
Without a program of this nature, there may not be the ability to have discussions about strategic properties in the downtown. There may be an issue where we identify potential community benefit that can only be identified through maybe an official plan or a community improvement plan that if this program's not in place, this council may not be able to identify that as in the future. So I think if we're talking about the grant, maybe the money doesn't need to be approved. Maybe the program should be approved, and then maybe budget can be allocated as needed, as council desires appropriate. But I think the programs definitely have value. I think they provide business owners, small business owners that may be, yes, struggling financially, economics, the interest rates, et cetera, mortgages, liens. But we're talking about areas of the town where RioCan's not here, coming in, doing a big renovation, making their storefronts look all pretty and sexy. These are people using their own hard-earned money and matching that. This is just a drop in the bucket, a fraction of the money that it's going to cost them to actually do these improvements. So I believe that, yeah, overall, money aside, maybe there is no money in the program, but I think the programs definitely have value in both the areas that we spoke about today.
Thank you. You've given me a lot to think about. Thank you.
Mayor Collier for the second time.
I wasn't going to speak, but I have to respond to that. And I mean, this is not the way we generally do things. Generally, we ask questions, then the motion's on the floor, and we speak to it, and we vote. We're way off track here. But one, I don't think it's fair to ask staff their personal opinions on these things. Okay, that's in the report. I don't think that was in line, but since the opinion's been given, I'm going to speak to it because all the things Ms. Romanowski mentioned, mortgage, interest rates, all these other things are exactly what is being felt by all our residents in the town of Ajax, which is why I can't support this. It's exactly, I cannot download this onto them. Somebody has to pay for this. Our budget is, whatever it is, $139 million. We need to get $139 million from somewhere. Anytime we add something, we need to go back to the taxpayer. This is a tax increase. It's a nice to have, it's not a need to have. I cannot support that under any circumstances. And the final thing is, we've talked a lot about the plaza. The plaza is going to be redeveloped. To me, these are throwaway costs. I don't know if I can talk about it, but we are going to be talking about this in a lot more detail on the 23rd of this month. It's not far away. So I, in addition, can't support something that I feel is kind of throwaway cost when we're talking about the plaza. I will leave it there. I hope I haven't sparked a whole new round of questions.
On that note, it does say in the resolutions for the council meeting on October 16th, it has been moved to the 23rd, correct? So we'll just make the change on that. I'll be the last to speak. Thank you, councilors, for the avid debate. I tend to agree with Mayor Collier. The report or the presentation on the 8th slide says it itself. You know, the CIP is a discretionary tool that can be implemented by the town, and there's no inherent right to municipal development incentives. I know countless businesses in Ward 2 that don't have access to this that went under. Restaurants that I frequented, and they didn't have access to even programs like these because of geographical location. I think it is, as a municipality, we should support small business, absolutely, but we shouldn't be necessarily funding them directly. I think that crosses a bit of a line. And, you know, I've made my points clear on the CIP many times previously, and we'll finalize with that. So after that, all that then, we will vote on the first one. So I'll just read that out loud. Council approved the proposed amendments to the Downtown Community Improvement Plan and staff be authorized to forward the implementing bylaw to the October 6th, no, sorry. Yes, the Downtown Committee, yeah, on October 23rd, 2023. This is the first vote we'll be voting on. We just did. I just called to vote, but you know, we're in different times. So yeah, regional council dies on this specific, on the downtown one.
In the downtown. Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate staff helping us out with some of those questions. It is a bigger area than just the plaza, and that was the point I was trying to make. And this area is an older area, and it needed a little bit of help and a little bit of revitalization, and has done for many, many years. And I think it's important. We love our small businesses. We have a lot of small businesses in Ajax. We like them, we want to keep them, and we want to attract more. But I agree that until redevelopment of the plaza happens, it's going to be, I mean, that is going to have to wait. It's going to take a longer bit of time. But it doesn't mean that the other business owners in the area can't, you know, do a little bit of something to their property to make it look half decent, and maybe put in those accessibility programs that we need and access to their buildings that we need. So I do support it. We don't have anybody, you know, we don't have people always banging on the door for that little bit of money, because they also have to pay towards it. So it's there if the opportunity arises and if they meet all the requirements. And I think that's quite clear in the document what they have to do to get there. So I will be supporting that.
Thank you. We will call to vote on point number 1. Do we have it? So it's the first, point number 1 is what we're voting on first. Yeah, please, thank you. We'll call to vote. And that passes. Thank you. Now on to point number 2. And that failed, correct? Okay, thank you. Moving on.
I do have a further for the second item.
Do you want to send that to the clerk?
The clerk has it.
Clerk, did you want to put that on the screen?
Just because the second was defeated, that Planning and Development Services staff be directed to investigate and report back to council on the termination of the Pickering Village Community Improvement Program, including any relevant statutory requirements and ongoing obligations under approved applications. I would just add to this at the October 23rd council meeting. And I would need a seconder, please.
Anybody want a second? I have a question. We can't talk about it until we have a seconder, so you can second and put it on the floor. I will second.
No.
No, we just voted no on the first one, on the last one. This is to dissolve the program now for the Pickering Village.
If I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Sorry, Mayor Collier, I'll second, because I don't have to relinquish chair anymore, correct?
That's correct.
So I will second, thank you.
So just speak to it, now that we have defeated the recommendation of staff to, what was the recommendation of staff? To approve, we need to do something. So council approved the proposed amendment, that failed. So the direction to staff would now be to wrap up, basically, to terminate the Pickering Village CIP going forward. But first, I want to know what the relevant statutory requirements are. Are there limitations in the Planning Act that are stopping us from doing certain things? Or do we already have any contractual obligations that we've already made commitments to that we might have to, which might affect our decision? Thank you.
A very rare point of information, Councillor Henry.
I think anybody has.
Point of information to Mayor Collier. Clarification, if this was to go through, does this mean that the one that passed for the downtown area would then be taken away?
No.
No, it specifically says for the Pickering Village
This
Community Improvement.
doesn't, this
Pickering
doesn't
Village
relate to the other.
We have questions, Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I kind of understand this, but we've removed the component monetarily on the last vote, correct? To the Chair?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's been removed. But the CIP is still in place at this time before we vote on this.
Correct. And so this instructs staff to kind of tie up loose ends, for lack of a better phrase.
Wrap it up.
Okay, because if the CIP stayed in place, it can't stay in place without the monetary, correct?
I'll go to staff on this. Do you guys know the answer
Can
to
it
that?
live without the monetary?
Through the chair to Councillor Tyler Morin, I believe I said that the program itself does not need to be funded. Council could fund a component of the program at a future date at their discretion through budget discussions.
We can always fill in the piggy bank, so to speak, to fund it as needed. But right now, it is unfunded. But it still exists.
Right, so then in the future, through the chair to whoever, if a business wanted to, they would be able, still be able to apply and just, even though it was non-budgeted, there's no money in the bank, they could still say, oh, am I able to get a $7,000 grant for the facade of my building if this still was in place?
Mr. Sawchuk?
So through the chair to Councillor Tyler Morin, if the program still exists, then I would assume they could make an application, but if there's no funding available, then we would be unable to fund it, I assume. I mean, it's a somewhat strange scenario, but yeah, if the program was not completely dissolved, it could go unfunded and at some point it could be brought back. But I don't imagine we'd be accepting applications if we don't have any money to support them.
So it's kind of a dead program here as it sits without the funding, through the chair.
So if I could interject.
Please.
Through the chair to Councillor Tyler Morin. There are different ways that we could administer it. One would be to not accept applications until such a time as council would approve budget dollars for the particular programs. We could accept applications and just hold them in a priority order until such a time as council approves budget monies. Or we could accept the applications for a period of time, say the first 6 to 8 months of the year, and then bring a report to council at the end of the year with the requests, and council can make a decision as to which ones they would approve and provide budget dollars to, likely in the new year, in the next operating budget cycle. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bauer. Mayor Collier is going to amend. So before you speak, we'll update it. Mayor Collier.
Thank you, Chair. With your acceptance as seconder, I would like
Given
to
it.
add the words, the Planning and Development Service staff be directed to cease accepting applications and investigate and report back to council on the termination. I assume that was a given, but we'll add that.
As seconder, I'm good with that. So on to the speaker list. Councilor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair Lee. So I think Mr. Sawchuk said that there is proposed a whole bunch of applications ready or waiting to be submitted, especially from the village. I'm not 100% sure if that's correct. But the second part of it was the downtown funds of $30,000. If that money is not used, nobody applies or not all of it is used, it's going to be placed into a reserve, which could fund applications for both downtown and PV if PV stays open in future years.
So through the chair to Councillor Bauer. So the first part of the question, yes, currently there are, in the Pickering Village CIP, there's about $72,000 worth of grants that are in process. Those have already been locked in. We've signed into funding agreements, and that's using funds that were already allocated through the 2023 operating budget. So I believe those are all, I would assume those are all good to sort of play out, and all will be wrapped up in the next couple of months. The second question, with regard to what the funds in the reserve account could be used for, the way the reserve account has been structured and the way we've proposed using those funds moving forward is for capital projects undertaken by the town in the CIP areas. So those funds wouldn't be, at least in the way that the fund is designed now, those funds would not be used to be allocated to property owners who make grant applications.
Okay. So then what would be required to amend that and use it as a carry forward to future years if we kept PV open but didn't fund it?
So we have a point of order.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Just a moment, Councilor Bauer. We're just going to clarification from the clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so the legislative landscape as it relates to how matters end up in the budget has obviously changed significantly. So under the new strong mayor powers, the mayor has absolute discretion about what gets in the budget and what does not get in the budget. Council's recourse, if it disagrees with any inclusion or non-inclusion in the budget, is to propose an amendment to that budget by resolution, which can then be vetoed by the mayor and overturned only by 2/3 of council. And I think it just needs to be clarified that there's no longer council approval of any portion of the budget. The budget is just, it's prepared by the mayor and deemed adopted once all of those processes are exhausted. I hope that clarifies the question.
Thank you. Councilor Bauer, did that clarify in terms of just the funding part?
No, it did answer a very good question. Thank you. But I was specifically asking on the premise that there would be funding for the downtown CIP that just passed, and the mayor's already told me what he thinks of that, but let's go forward as though it was provided, and that money is not used in 2024, so it's put in the reserve. Currently, the reserve is set up that carryover is used for capital projects for CIP area. How could that be amended so that reserve could then be used for future applications of CIP money?
So, Councilor Bauer, we kind of have to focus in more on the motion in front of you right now. So that question would have been in order before the votes had happened. So this is, or the previous vote. So this one is on the current motion right now. So
Yes.
like allocations of reserves, for example, wouldn't apply to this motion.
Councillor Lee, point of order, I think it does because it depends on that answer to whether or not I support shutting down PVCIP altogether or leaving it as is with no funding.
Right. It is always within order for you to challenge the decision of the chair, but you'd have to call for that. So right now, I'm ruling you out of order right now for your questions. So if you'd like to rule my decision, challenge my decision, you can call for that if you'd like.
I would like to challenge your decision.
All right. We are breaking so much ground. So it's the challenge. We can just do a hand vote if that's okay.
Mr. Chair, in order to have all members vote and their vote reflected, we do require to vote using the delegate stations.
All right, let's do it.
Just to be clear, if we support the chair, we vote
Yes.
no.
Please repeat, I can't hear.
So, sorry, hold on. Mayor Collier, can you hit your speak button? So, because this is important. Go ahead.
Just to be clear, if we support the challenge of the chair, you vote yes. If you support the chair's decision, you vote no.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you support the chair, you vote no, my decision. If you support Councillor Bauer's challenging, you vote yes. And the vote will be coming?
The vote is now open.
Okay, so that is, yeah, so Councilor Bauer, do you have any further questions regarding the motion in front of you?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the speaker list, we have Regional Councilor Dyes.
Thank you. Just through you to Mr. Romanowski, I think. So it was a big decision, if I remember correctly, going into a CIP and going through the process of the CIP. Can we allow it to lie dormant for a while and then we keep that CIP designation? Or if we let it go, how difficult is it to reenact it or get another one?
So through the chair to Councillor Dyes, it's an immense amount of work to prepare a CIP. It's essentially like passing an official plan amendment with consultation with the province and other agencies. The way that this CIP before you tonight was designed was that there could be consideration through the annual operating budget as to how many funds would be provided towards each program or each community improvement plan, and that was done intentionally, knowing that council could reevaluate their priorities as you move forward. So it is a lot of work to establish these, but there is the ability to set the budget, and as Mayor Collier alluded to, he would be able to set that annually if need be, if the community improvement plan was to be implemented.
You wouldn't be able to set the budget if it was implemented? Is that what you said? I'm sorry.
That's what he said, yes. And further to Mr. McCullough's response through the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes, like, it's a big process. It's a lot of work to go through. Years of work in the initial phases of the CIP in the original CIP that was put in place. And, you know, the amount of work that went into this CIP, you know, retooling since 2019. So it is a substantial amount of work over 10 reports on this item itself. So
So we would then be able to keep a CIP but not fund it right now and then wait till, you know, maybe improvement.
that could be up to council discretion. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Thank you. So just to reiterate, currently, we're not giving the village any funding right now through the CIP. This can stay open, this tool costs us nothing to stay open. Should we choose to use it at a later date and time, we can. If we don't, we don't, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, we have the motion in front of you. We will call to vote. And that motion fails. Okay, so we are at the end of our agenda of a very, a meeting of firsts. Finally, we have no, sorry, let me just go through this. We have no presentation reports. We have a motion to move, a movement to adjourn, moved by Mayor Collier, second by Councillor Tyler Morin, that the October 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Community Affairs and Planning Committee be adjourned. I'm just gonna take hands at this point. All in favor? Can I do that this time? Thank you. You know what? We're gonna vote. I don't know what happened there. It's all right. We're gonna vote. If this doesn't pass, I mean, that'll be another first, but that passes. Thank you.